Today is Tuesday, February 18th. We'll tell you about a Delta jet that flipped, becoming the latest in a series of plane crashes. Also, we'll update you on the exodus of federal employees from the resignations to the firings to the unfirings. Plus, how some hospitals are busier now than at points of the pandemic, what goals Meta has for humanoid robots, and what the latest A-list ceremony tells us about this awards season. Those stories and more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. We start today with news of another plane crash, this time in Toronto. A Delta Airlines regional jet had just flown from Minneapolis, and passengers say all went well until they got to Toronto. After the plane landed, it flipped upside down and at least one wing ripped off. Thankfully, everyone was able to get off before it burst into flames. 18 people on board were hurt, but they're all expected to be okay. At the time, Toronto was in the middle of a snowstorm with heavy winds, but officials say it's important not to speculate about the cause of the crash since the investigation is just beginning. There was a ground stop at the Toronto airport for a little while after this. This morning, though, flights are going in and out as usual. But keep in mind, there still may be some delays, in part because of the earlier ground stop, but also because of back-to-back snowstorms. A dangerous storm caused flooding for millions of people from the Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic and eventually the South. The hardest hit was Kentucky, which got more than a month's worth of rain in less than 24 hours. At least 12 people died in Kentucky alone. More than 1,000 others had to be rescued. And search and rescue teams are still looking for people who may still be trapped. Other flash flood emergencies were issued in Virginia, West Virginia, and Tennessee. And things could get even worse in the coming days as river levels continue to rise. The same storm brought severe thunderstorms to the Deep South and heavy snow to parts of the Great Lakes and Northeast. Now a widespread winter storm is moving in today and tomorrow. It could bring record-breaking cold across the central U.S. from the Canadian border to the Gulf Coast. Parts of Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, and Kentucky could get up to a half foot of snow. Then a little further south, ice is in the forecast for states like Oklahoma and Arkansas. Bitter cold is expected to stick around for most of the U.S. through the end of this week. The White House is keeping up a wave of job cuts across the federal workforce, but the fallout has been messy. And in a few instances, the government has had to unfire people. For example, at the Energy Department, officials fired more than 300 staffers at the National Nuclear Security Administration. But news outlets like CNN and Bloomberg have cited sources who say officials who ordered the cuts did not realize the agency oversees America's nuclear weapons, or at least how important those workers were to national security. And when they did, they quickly tried to bring at least some people back on. Also, over the weekend, employees at the FDA were fired, including workers who review the safety of food ingredients, medical devices, and other products. Separately, a few hundred employees at the FAA were fired, including some engineers and technicians who were once considered critical. And the Justice Department fired a handful of immigration judges, which was seen as an especially surprising move, since, as we've mentioned in the past, immigration courts are already severely backed up. The DOJ has actually been among the hardest hit by the White House's cutbacks, partly because the department fired people involved in certain cases that involved President Trump, and also because many employees are quitting in protest. There was a wave of resignations when the DOJ moved to dismiss a corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And over the weekend, 4 top New York City officials also said they would resign over it. There have also been reports of mass job cuts at the Department of Education, the CDC, EPA, the IRS, the Department of Veteran Affairs, and many more. And that's on top of the 75,000 workers who took President Trump's buyouts. In the end, President Trump's upheaval could amount to hundreds of thousands of jobs lost. The president defends the cuts, saying they're in an effort to address excessive government spending and make sure everyone is on board with his administration's agenda. Ultimately, many of the jobs will not be refilled. At this point in President Trump's second term, he has signed dozens of executive orders, but many of them are being challenged. In fact, at least 74 lawsuits have been filed in federal courts over Trump's orders, and it will be up to the judicial system to decide whether Trump's actions are legal or not. Already, though, Trump drew backlash over the weekend with a post on social media. It reads, without context, quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." The quote has been attributed to the notorious French dictator Napoleon Bonaparte. And when the White House was asked what Trump meant to say with the post, representatives said no comment. Then Trump reposted a picture of Napoleon. Thousands of protesters actually referred to President Trump as a king on President's Day, but not in a good way. Across major cities like Washington, D.C., Boston, Orlando, and Seattle, people chanted things like, "No king, no crown, we will not back down." Similar protests are scheduled for next month. Tensions between the U.S. and Canada were on full display at the Four Nations Face-Off hockey tournament. When the U.S. faced Canada on Saturday, fans booed the American national anthem. Then there were 3 fights within the first 9 seconds of the game. The game was intense all the way through until eventually the U.S. won it 3-1. The U.S. lost its game against Sweden last night, but because Canada beat Finland earlier in the day, the U.S. and Canada are still the top 2 teams. And that means they'll face a rematch for the championship this Thursday. Speaking of sports, William Byron won NASCAR's greatest prize for the 2nd year in a row. The Daytona 500, aka the Great American Race, ran on Sunday. Besides the racers, there were plenty of other celebrities there. For example, Anthony Mackie, who plays Captain America Sam Wilson, served as the Grand Marshal. President Trump also made an appearance, saying the spirit of NASCAR will, quote, fuel America's golden age. More news ahead, but first, I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor. I'm a fan of Honeylove for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, their products are great. Shapewear that is designed to move with you, no rolling up and down while you're trying to hit the dance floor or even just walk around. And I actually like the design of this shapewear. Honeylove shapewear is perfect for any special event. And you know I love their leggings, too, for my everyday wardrobe. Great fabric, convenient pockets, perfect waist support and fit. But there's also the company that I appreciate. It's a female-founded brand designed by women who actually wear the products to know they're good. And their messaging and products are always inclusive of different types of bodies. So treat yourself to the best bras, shapewear, and leggings on the market. Save 20% off Honeylove at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off honeylove.com/newsworthy to find your perfect fit. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you've heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Elevate your comfort, elevate your style with Honeylove. Now back to the news. Some American hospitals are becoming overwhelmed with flu patients. As we've told you before, the flu season is unusually intense and severe. And now hospitalization rates are topping levels seen during the COVID-19 Delta wave in fall of 2021. To be clear, they're still about half of what they were at the peak of the pandemic, which was the Omicron wave in 2022. But this is also the first season since the pandemic started that there have been more hospitalizations for flu than COVID. Another thing unusual about this year's flu season, there are 2 strains going around in roughly equal amounts. Fewer than half of adults and kids have had a flu shot this year. And health experts think it will be at least a month before this flu season starts to improve. Flu rates are high coast to coast. But places being hit the hardest are on the East Coast, Midwest, and Pacific Northwest. Norovirus is becoming a growing problem for cruises this year. Already in 2025, 7 cruise ships sailing out of the U.S. have reported norovirus outbreaks. Most recently, it happened on the Holland American cruise ship during its journey through the Caribbean and Central America. That ship docked in Florida over the weekend, just days after a Royal Caribbean ship also returned to Florida in the throes of an outbreak. About 170 people got sick in each of the 2 ships. The CDC says things could have been even worse if it weren't for cruise lines that implemented quarantines and strict cleaning protocols, and ships get deep cleaned before the next round of passengers get on board. Southwest Airlines announced the first mass layoff in company history. The carrier says it's cutting 15% of its corporate workforce. In other words, nearly 1,800 people are losing their jobs, but no frontline workers like pilots or flight attendants. It's all part of a turnaround plan that includes changes to Southwest's long-term business model. The airline also froze hirings and promotions, paused the internship program, and ended team-building rallies that have been around since the 1980s. Plus, the airline cut certain routes that were not profitable. And it has plans to ditch its open seating model and create a section with extra legroom. Even more changes could be coming since investors have been pressuring the airline to rein in expenses. Meta is breaking into the humanoid robot business. As Bloomberg reports, the tech giant wants robots powered by artificial intelligence to act like humans and help with physical tasks. And the initial focus is on household chores. For example, folding clothes, carrying a glass of water, placing dishes in a rack for cleaning, and so on. Already, other big tech companies like Apple, Google, and Tesla have taken on the humanoid robot challenge, and some companies have sold to businesses and manufacturers. But so far, no one has created anything useful enough yet to become widely available for homes. Now, Meta says it can build a foundation for the rest of the market. Movie stars met in London this weekend for Britain's equivalent of the Oscars. We're talking about the BAFTAs. Their conclave won the Best Movie title, as well as 3 other top prizes. And that just proves how this award season is unique. No one movie has dominated the major ceremonies. At the Golden Globes, Emilia Perez and The Brutalist were big winners. Then the Critics' Choice Awards recognized Anora, as did the Directors Guild and Producers Guild of America. So the momentum for the Best Picture Oscar is all over the place. Other top contenders include A Complete Unknown, Wicked, and The Substance. The Academy Awards are set for March 2nd. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, thanks to our sponsor, Ancient Nutrition. The human body is an amazing thing. It can repair and grow in ways that are still pushing the limits of what science can explain, even in 2025. At the same time, as you age, your body's natural healing and building processes slow down. I've already felt a difference myself. And while it's totally normal, that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do about it. A collagen supplement from Ancient Nutrition can help. Ancient Nutrition's mission is to create high-quality supplements that combine the best of ancient wisdom and modern science. Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean supplement contains 10 types of collagen from 10 real food-based sources. This formula is powered by clinically studied ingredients that promote fat loss and healthy weight management. Collagen can also reduce joint discomfort and improve the look and growth of your skin, hair, and nails. And it's really simple to use. I've been scooping some into my morning coffee or smoothie, and that's all it takes to get the benefits. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/newsworthy. That's ancientnutrition.com/newsworthy for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to Trivia Tuesday. And today's trivia question is, what popular toy was invented by a NASA scientist? As for last week's trivia question, how much did a movie ticket cost in 1950? The answer is 25 cents. So pretty different from 2025, since now the average movie ticket costs about $11. Of course, movies weren't the only things cheaper back in 1950. Back then, a loaf of bread cost about 14 cents. A gallon of gas was less than 30 cents. And the average cost of a new house was around $15,000. Thankfully, our salaries have gone up too. In 1950, the median family income was about $3,000 a year. Now it's more than $80,000, though that varies widely. And even still, our current cost of living outpaces the wage increase. Analysis shows it's still much less affordable now to keep a similar standard of living than it was back then. Well, thank you so much for joining us to get caught up on the news. You can further support our work here and get access to ad-free episodes by becoming a Newsworthy Insider. Start your free trial at thenewsworthy.com/insider. Thank you so much for your support in advance. And Wondery Plus subscribers can listen to episodes of The Newsworthy ad-free as well in the Wondery app. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news to know. Until then, have a great day.